unfortunate death did really hurt you at the time, from what I understand. Is that why you took a vacation from recording for a while?
Death, but it certainly played a great influence on my decision to not perform.
Before death claimed him, Marvin Gaye revealed the devastating truth about Tammi Terrell that destroyed him. Everyone saw the chemistry between them. In fact, Motown insiders whispered they were having an affair while Marvin was married and Tammi was with David Ruffin.
He had told her that he had 6 or 7 partners and that she was the one. And you could tell he meant it.
When she died at 24, her death completely sent Marvin toward his own violent death.
I want people to know that Marvin was not perfect. He wasn't a perfect. He had faults like everybody else.
So, let's get into it. From the moment Marvin Gaye and Tammi Terrell first stepped into a studio together, something clicked. The chemistry was undeniable. When they sang, it felt like they were in their own world. Fans could see it. Even their peers could see it. They weren't just two singers thrown together for a duet. They were magic. Their voices intertwined in a way that felt natural, effortless, like fate had brought them together. But was it more than music? That's where things get complicated. Rumors swirled for years that Marvin and Tammi were in love. They never confirmed it, but the way they looked at each other, the way Marvin protected her, it left people wondering. Even if it wasn't romantic, it was deep, and it was real. But Tammi's life wasn't as beautiful as the songs she sang with Marvin. Tammi Terrell's life was filled with pain. Long before she ever met Marvin Gaye. She was just a teenager when she signed her first record deal, but behind the scenes, she was suffering. When Tammi was 11, she won a local talent contest at the Earl Theater in Philadelphia. Around this time, she decided to change her name to Tammi, inspired by the theme song from the movie Tammi and the Bachelor. She wanted a fresh start, and changing her name felt like a way to leave her past behind. By the time she was 15, Tammi's hard work paid off. She was discovered by Luther Dixon, a music producer, and signed a deal with Scepter Records. Under the name Tammi Montgomery, she recorded her first song, If You See Bill, and did demo work for the Shirelles. In 1962, she released her second single, The Voice of Experience, but soon after, she left the label. While her solo career was slowly gaining traction, Tammi's big break came when she joined the Motown Revue, opening for the Temptations. It was during this tour that Tammi met David Ruffin, the lead singer of the Temptations, and the two began a passionate but rocky romance. In 1967, Tammi finally got her big break when she replaced Kim Weston as Marvin Gaye's duet partner. Back in 1967, Motown's smoothest crooner, Marvin Gaye, needed a new duet partner. Imagine that, getting the chance to sing alongside Marvin himself. Every female singer at Motown would have jumped at the opportunity. But Berry Gordy had someone else in mind, someone unexpected, Tammi Terrell. She wasn't a big star yet, but maybe that was the point. Pairing her with Marvin gave her a shot at the big time, and Gordy had a hunch it would work. But that wasn't the only gamble. Gordy also brought in a fresh songwriting duo, Nick Ashford and Valerie Simpson, who had penned a song meant for Dusty Springfield. That song was Ain't No Mountain High Enough. When Marvin and Tammi's version hit the airwaves on April 27, 1967, it was pure magic. The song soared to number 1, 19 on the pop charts, and number 3 on the R&B charts. From the moment you heard it, you just knew it was special. Their voices blended so effortlessly, their chemistry so electric, that people believed they were truly in love. And in a way, maybe they were, at least in the moment. The way Tammi leaned into Marvin, the way their voices wrapped around each other like a warm embrace. It felt real. And yet, in real life, Marvin was married, and Tammi was head over heels for David Ruffin of The Temptations. Still, that didn't stop the sparks from flying in their music. Their next hit, Your Precious Love, took things to another level.
Heaven must have sent your precious love.
That little finger snap, the sultry groove. It wasn't just a song, it was a whole mood. Some even say it outshined Ain't No Mountain High Enough. It was the song for lovers, something meant for slow dances and whispered promises. The fans couldn't get enough. DJs played it immediately, no hesitation, no waiting. Marvin and Tammi had arrived. They weren't just a musical duo, they looked the part too. They were young, beautiful, and full of life, making everyone believe in their fairy tale romance. But real life wasn't so kind to Tammi. While she was serenading the world with songs about perfect love, her own relationship with David Ruffin was anything but. Everyone had heard the rumors, some so extreme they sounded like urban legends. What seemed like a glamorous pairing between two rising stars was riddled with heartbreak, betrayal, and alleged abuse. Many believe this toxic relationship played a key role in Tammi's emotional and physical struggles, which worsened in her final years. Early in their relationship, he swept Tammi off her feet, going to great lengths to impress her. It's said that Ruffin refused to travel with his fellow Temptations on their tour bus, instead opting to ride with Tammi in a limo. He spared no effort in making her feel special, showering her with grand gestures and gifts. One of Ruffin's most dramatic moves was his surprise marriage proposal to Tammi. She accepted, overjoyed by his apparent devotion. However, her happiness was short-lived. Tammi was blindsided when she learned Ruffin was already married, with 3 children and another girlfriend in Detroit. This revelation devastated her, leaving her feeling humiliated and betrayed. The cracks in their relationship began to widen, especially as Ruffin's struggles with drug addiction and pride took a toll on his behavior. He became increasingly unpredictable, and their once passionate relationship spiraled into constant arguments and emotional turmoil. Friends close to Tammi claimed she was deeply affected by the stress Ruffin caused, and her infamous migraines reportedly worsened during this period. The relationship's toxicity reached a breaking point with allegations of physical abuse. In one particularly horrifying incident, Ruffin is said to have hit Tammi on the head with a motorcycle helmet during an argument. This violent episode was reportedly the final straw for Tammi, who decided to end their relationship in 1967. Her friends and family were deeply concerned about how Ruffin's behavior had impacted Tammi. Stories of his erratic actions painted a grim picture. One particularly shocking account involved a puppy Ruffin had given Tammi as a gift. According to some reports, Ruffin later beat the ite in a fit of rage. While this claim remains unconfirmed, it underscores the level of instability that surrounded their relationship. Beyond the personal pain, Tammi's family also felt that Motown had failed to protect her during this time. Despite being aware of Ruffin's issues, the label did little to intervene or provide support. Tammi's mother, Jenny Montgomery, reportedly harbored a deep resentment toward Motown for prioritizing its stars' public image over their well-being.
She said, well, I don't want him in the funeral. I said, you what? She said, I don't want him in the funeral. She said, Marvin can come, but she said the rest of them cannot come.
The emotional toll of her relationship with Ruffin wasn't just private. It seeped into Tammi's professional life as well. Her headaches, which were already a serious issue, doubled in intensity due to the stress and constant conflict. Friends later reflected that Tammi's bright-spirited nature began to fade as her emotional state deteriorated. When Tammi finally ended things with Ruffin, it was a moment of liberation, but the damage had already been done. The betrayal, abuse, and emotional strain she endured during their time together left lasting scars. She loved him, but even she had a breaking point. But David Ruffin wasn't the first man in Tammi's life to cause her pain. Her earlier relationship with James Brown also left her emotionally scarred. Tammi met James Brown when she was just 17 years old. She quickly became part of his entourage, performing with him on stage and gaining national recognition.
Well, I get a cross-cut, but I do get a lot of new young faces.
However, her role came with an unspoken and deeply troubling expectation. She was forced into an intimate relationship with Brown, who was 30 years old at the time. Tammi's mother was understandably concerned about her young daughter entering the demanding and fast-paced entertainment world. Her fears were temporarily eased when Brown's assistant, Gertie, promised to look after Tammi while she was on the road. But it quickly became evident that this arrangement was not as protective as it seemed. Brown managed to gain private access to Tammi shortly after she joined his tour, raising questions about whether Gertie was turning a blind eye or even helping facilitate their encounters. At first, Brown lavished Tammi with gifts and attention. He spoiled her with expensive presents, money, and luxurious hotel stays as they traveled from city to city. However, the darker side of their relationship soon emerged, leaving lasting scars on Tammi, both physically and emotionally. One infamous incident that many people ask about involved James Brown being found in Tammi's bed. According to Tammi's sister, Ludi, this happened during a tour stop in New York City. Tammi's mother and Ludi had come to visit her, and the three of them spent the day shopping. When they returned to Tammi's hotel room, they found James Brown asleep in her bed. Ludi explained that James woke up, greeted them politely, and then left. Her mother was understandably worried, but James's assistant, Gertie, once again reassured her that Tammi was being looked after. However, this was far from the truth. Over time, Tammi's family discovered that James Brown and Tammi were in a full-blown, intimate relationship. What's worse, they also found out he was physically abusive toward her. Reports from other performers who were on tour confirmed that James would beat Tammi, and the abuse was severe. The breaking point came when James beat Tammi so badly that she turned to singer Gene Chandler, also known as the Duke of Earl, for help. Chandler later said that Tammi came to him after a particularly brutal beating. He called her parents and told them what had happened. Ludi described the phone call and her family's reaction. "Our mother got a heartbreaking call. We learned that James had beaten Tammi terribly, and she wanted to come home. My father, who had trusted James with his young daughter, was devastated." When Tammi returned home, it was clear she had been through a lot. Ludi recalled how tired and worn out Tammi looked. While unpacking her things, their mother found a blue silk dress James had given Tammi. The dress was covered in blood. It turned out that one of James's assaults involved an umbrella, and the injuries Tammi suffered were horrifying. James Brown's violent behavior wasn't limited to Tammi. Bobby Bennett, a member of the famous Flames, James Brown's group, also experienced his wrath. In 1968, James pointed a gun at Bobby over a personal dispute, accusing him of telling his girlfriend that he had another woman. Bobby fought back and nearly shoved James's head through a window. This wasn't an isolated incident. Bobby revealed that James's violent temper often extended to those around him. Bobby also witnessed how James treated Tammi. He shared that James would beat her until she bled. Bobby said, "Tammi left him because she didn't want to keep getting her butt whipped." Tammi's relationship with James Brown left lasting scars, both physically and emotionally. She eventually escaped the abuse, but the trauma stayed with her. Her tragic experiences with James were just one part of her life, but they revealed the darker side of a music legend who was known to the public as the Godfather of Soul. Still, love and heartbreak weren't her only struggles. The headaches she had suffered since childhood were getting worse, so bad she could barely function. One day, she took a friend's hand and placed it on her head. "Feel that?" she said. It was a knot the size of a golf ball. "My head is offing me." Despite the pain, Tammi kept singing. With Ain't Nothing Like the Real Thing, she and Marvin took their chemistry to a whole new level. Unlike their previous recordings, where they sang separately and their vocals were mixed later, This time they stood at the same microphone. Face to face, voice to voice, they created something timeless.
No other sound is quite the same as your name.
Tammi had a way of bringing out the best in Marvin. He was notoriously shy, but she knew how to push him, how to make him sing with everything he had. "I'm going to make that man sing," she once said with a knowing smile. And she did. But even Marvin couldn't ignore how often Tammi was in pain. It all came to a head during a performance at a small college in Virginia. They were in the middle of Your Precious Love when Tammi suddenly collapsed in Marvin's arms. The pain had finally become too much. Marvin was shaken to his core. He carried her off stage himself, devastated. Somehow, he felt responsible, like he should have seen the signs earlier. He canceled the rest of their tour and made sure Tammi got back home to Detroit. Soon after, she flew to Philadelphia for medical tests. The doctors had grim news. It wasn't just migraines or stress. It was a brain tumor. There was no time to waste. Surgeons prepared for a risky 6-hour operation. The deeper they went into the brain, the higher the danger. But they had to try. When she woke up, it seemed like a miracle. The headaches were gone. The pain had subsided. And in true Tammi fashion, her first thought wasn't about resting or recovering. It was about getting back to Motown, back to the music she loved. Because for Tammi, singing wasn't just something she did. It was who she was. Just 6 months after her surgery, Tammi Terrell was back in the studio with Marvin Gaye. Even after everything she'd been through, she was determined to keep going. Their next song, another love-filled anthem from the brilliant Ashford and Simpson, You're All I Need to Get By. But something had changed. Tammi wasn't as confident as she used to be. She worried she didn't sound the same, that her voice was too weak. "You'll never get me up that hill again," she would joke, touching her head, still healing from surgery. Recording took longer than usual, with Tammi in and out of the studio. But when they finally wrapped it up, flawless. Absolutely flawless. Today, if you go digging through the vaults at Universal Mastering Studios in New York, you'll find something special. Original master tapes of Tammi's solo recordings and her duets with Marvin. It's a rare and beautiful look at history. Tammi was the real deal. Strip away the big arrangements, the instruments, even Marvin's legendary voice, and what's left? Just Tammi, pure and unfiltered.
If this world were mine, I'd make you a king.
Every note, every word, she poured her heart into it. And when she sang, you felt it. She had this way of making the hair on your arms stand up, of reaching right into your soul. But behind the music, her battle was far from over. The doctors hadn't been able to remove all of the tumor. It came back, bringing the excruciating headaches with it. She underwent another surgery, this time to insert tubes to drain fluid from her brain. Then another, and another. 4 major operations. Despite all this, Tammi never gave up hope. She spent months in Philadelphia's Graduate Hospital, where the staff adored her. She fought through every step, always believing she'd recover, that she'd get back to the stage where she belonged. Her doctors, however, knew the truth. The cancer was relentless. It wasn't curable, but they didn't tell Tammi everything.
If I had Tammi, you're dying, you're gonna die, I think she would have died right then and there. Some can take that type of information and some can't.
While she was in the hospital, something incredible was happening. Ain't Nothing Like the Real Thing was released on March 28, 1968, and it took off, shooting to the top of the R&B charts. Tammi finally had a #1 hit, if only she'd been able to fully enjoy it. But by 1970, Tammy's condition had worsened drastically. She was in a wheelchair, losing her sight and hair, and her weight had dropped to just 93 pounds. After her 8th surgery on January 21, 1970, Tammi slipped into a coma and never woke up. On March 16, 1970, she passed away, just shy of her 25th birthday. Her death devastated everyone who knew her, but no one felt it more deeply than Marvin Gaye. Losing Tammi changed him forever. He was heartbroken and began struggling with drug abuse as he tried to cope with the loss of his beloved friend and singing partner. He would later say that losing Tammi was like losing a piece of his own soul. After her death, Marvin vowed never to replace her as his duet partner, despite pressure from Motown to do so. This promise speaks volumes about the bond they shared. In any case, many people blamed Motown for the hardships that Tammi faced in her life. Some even questioned whether the record label could have done more to shield her. But it was the 1960s, where the music industry was a fast-paced and often ruthless environment. Artists were pushed to their limits, with little regard for their mental or physical health. Tammi was no exception. Back then, it was all about the hits. Nobody cared about what was happening behind the scenes. Some believe Motown's neglect played a significant role in Tammy's downfall. From her abusive relationships to her grueling work schedule, it seemed like the label prioritized profits over people. Tammy's mother, Jenny Montgomery, reportedly resented Motown for this, which could explain why she banned its artists from her funeral. In the years following Tammy's death, Marvin Gaye struggled to move on. He fell into a deep depression, questioning the meaning of his career and life itself. Marvin's 1971 album, What's Going On, was heavily influenced by Tammy's death and the emotional toll it took on him. Songs like When I Feel the Need are widely believed to be tributes to Tammi, capturing his grief and longing for closure. But what many people had not realized was that Marvin's life had begun falling apart even long before Tammi came into the picture. While Marvin Gaye's music brought joy to millions, his personal life was anything but joyful. Behind the soulful voice and timeless classics, he battled addiction, depression, and an increasingly severe paranoia that consumed his final years. His relationship with his father, Marvin Gaye Sr., a strict Pentecostal preacher, only worsened his downward spiral, culminating in a tragic and violent end. In the early 1980s, Marvin Gaye became convinced that he was being hunted. He spoke frequently about assassination attempts, though many dismissed his fears as drug-induced paranoia. "I've got enemies everywhere, and I don't even know who they are," he once said. A chilling statement considering what would come next. By 1983, his paranoia had reached disturbing levels. He rarely went anywhere without a bulletproof vest and even gifted his father a gun, the same one that would later off him. It was as if he foresaw his own demise. He hired armed bodyguards, refused drinks unless served by his sister, and even held a press conference claiming he had been poisoned. Friends and family could see his mental state deteriorating, but no one could stop the inevitable.
I want people to know that Marvin was not perfect. He wasn't a perfect. He had faults like everybody else.
Despite his fears, Marvin was forced to tour in 1983 to pay off massive debts, including unpaid taxes. The S-Healing Tour was meant to be his comeback, but instead, it became a nightmare. While he dazzled audiences behind the scenes, he was crumbling. Paranoia crept into every aspect of his performances. He became obsessed with security, fearing that someone would harm him. In Florida, his body gave out. He was hospitalized for exhaustion. He later confided that the tour would be the death of him. Those words proved hauntingly accurate. Unable to endure life on the road, Marvin returned home to his parents' house, where he sought comfort. Instead, he found himself back in a toxic environment with his domineering father. His relationship with Marvin Sr. had always been strained. Gaye described his childhood as living under the rule of a cruel, all-powerful king. His father was a deeply complicated man, strict in his Pentecostal beliefs, yet rumored to be a closeted crossdresser with a drinking problem. He would shift between warmth and distance, but under the influence of alcohol, he became bitter and volatile.
You know why you didn't make it? One thing. Remember you asked us to pray for you?
That's one time I didn't pray for you. I won't tell you why, because I didn't want them to break you up.
Gaye's presence in the house reignited old tensions. His drug use worsened, and his behavior grew erratic. At one point, he hurled a gun through a window in a paranoid frenzy. His mother, Alberta, was devastated to watch her son spiral further. Meanwhile, his father seethed with resentment, believing Marvin had taken over the household. The tension was unbearable, and it was only a matter of time before it exploded. On April 1st, 1984, Marvin Gaye's worst fears became reality. Not from an unknown assassin, but from within his own home. The argument that led to his death started over something trivial. Marvin Sr. was searching for an insurance letter. When he couldn't find it, he erupted in anger at Alberta. Marvin, hearing the commotion, stepped in to defend his mother. The situation escalated, turning physical. Humiliated and enraged, Marvin Sr. left the room. Minutes later, he returned with the gun Marvin had given him. Without hesitation, he pulled the trigger. 2 shots to the chest ended Marvin Gaye's life the day before his 45th birthday. In any case, Tammi Terrell's death wasn't just a loss for music, it was a loss for Marvin Gaye's soul. She was his light in an industry full of darkness, and when that light went out, he was never the same again. We may never know the full truth about their relationship, whether it was love, friendship, or something in between. But what we do know is this: Marvin Gaye and Tammi Terrell created something timeless, something that, even after all the tragedy, still lives on. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Bye.